So, Florence, just for people listening who don't know you, lots of people will, but some won't be quite so certain. So, your feminist awakening occurred when? Would you say it was at school or a bit later than that?
Yes, probably in school. I think I had it quite early on when I was in school. I was in a group of friends, and I'd actually stopped wearing a bra, and then people started to talk about the fact that I wasn't wearing a bra anymore, and I was actually not wearing a bra, not for feminist reasons, not because I wanted to burn my bra or anything like that. It was just because my back was hurting, and then I became very aware of my body. And then it wasn't until I went to start going out at the age of 18 that I noticed men groping, harassing me and my friends in nightclubs. But all of my friends were older than me, so they'd been very used to it and experienced it quite a bit. And I was the only person who thought that it was absolutely insane that this was so normalized. So I started to put it into my artwork and my illustrations, started sharing them online, and gained an audience through people relating to the same issues. And it was really empowering and also very disheartening to realize that a lot of women were feeling the same way.
Right.
And
And indeed
yeah,
had felt that way for hundreds of years. I mean, let's be honest,
hundreds of
none of
years.
this is new, is it?
No,
Unfortunately.
no, no. I was interviewed by someone recently who was twice my age, and she said that her journey into her journey coming into feminism was almost exactly the same as mine, and that it's quite sad that nothing's changed, and that a lot of women come into this space through rage and through the same experiences.
It's really funny you mention that because I have tried to have this conversation with my parents actually, who are well into their 80s. I'm 58; they're into their 80s, and
Mm.
they're not in any way malicious people, but I don't think they're unusual in being from their generation. They don't really get it because they perhaps didn't get the opportunity to question this status quo at all. It was simply that there was one way of living that was available to women and another way for men.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I also think it's become quite a privilege to even have time to sit and reflect on things. I think we all gained some of that during the pandemic, where a lot of us realized a lot about ourselves because we weren't working a 9 to 5. A lot of people weren't working a 9 to 5. They were sent home for lockdown or quarantine. I think a lot of realizations came out of that. I definitely agree with you that not all the even with my own parents, I have a very good relationship with them, but there's some stuff that they don't understand yet. And I don't think it's malicious. And I think that it does take a lot of compassion to be able to have those conversations with people who don't come from a bad place, but come from a fixed mindset of things
Mm,
because it's all they ever knew. And I think you do have to have some compassion when it comes to talking about this stuff, because
mm.
otherwise people like just end up doubling down on their original beliefs.
Doubling down and worse, actually. I mean, you could argue, couldn't you, Florence, that we've never been in a more worrying place with the polarization of genders. And also, if you look at how many men clearly haven't got the memo or spent the time reading it, young men are sometimes they're dubious allies of feminism. Do you find that in your own generation?
I think there's a new trend with my generation of men learning about this stuff, but using it just to further their agenda, to either date women. I've had it even with my book. I've had men use my book to get women into bed with them or to date women. And I feel like the more that we are using this, and of course, not all men, but there's a new trend with men learning about feminism that uh, they're using it to further their agenda with
Yeah.
women.
And we really want to say not all men. It's so important to say not all men because do you know what? Sometimes I think it must be so difficult if you're a nice, kind, compassionate, empathetic man, listening to conversations which make you out to be part of something that is really deeply troubling. But I wonder, when you were writing your novel, when you were writing your self-help book, is there a bit of you that thinks, I've got to make this appealing to everybody? Across the spectrum. I mean, and get away from the kind of the feminist tag.
I think I the feminist tag can be limiting for all the reasons you're saying, because it doesn't appeal to some people. But the title of my first book, Women Don't Owe You Pretty, was aimed at men. And a lot of men have found a lot of empowerment from the book, even just on their own level of their understanding of boundaries. But also I've met men in pub gardens who have read my book. It was after everything that happened with Sarah Everard. Their girlfriends around them had asked them to read my book, and they'd started charities and companies and conversations with the people in their lives that have helped to get women home safely. All of this kind of stuff. I think that my work can appeal to men, but I feel like they need someone in their life to maybe introduce it to them. I've always tried to find a way not to water down my message, because I don't think that it should be watered down that 90% of all violent crime committed to women happens to men, or that most of the violent crime in the world is committed by men. I don't think that should be watered down. But to even get people to listen to those conversations, I think there does need to be a bridge between understanding and some ideas that seem so foreign and complex to people.
Your artwork is really direct and really gets some quite complex messages over in a very, very easy to understand way, which is, by the way, I'm not saying it's easy to do, because if it was, everybody would be doing it, and let's face it, you've done it. But there's one poster of yours I like, stop raising him, he's not your son, and there's a very stern looking woman with her arms folded. And it does seem to me that there are an amazing number of women, and not just women, who seem prepared to settle for life with a man who is a sort of giant toddler, sort of forever infantilized. But I wonder whether it suits the woman or indeed their male partner as well. What do you think about that?
I think it's a really interesting dynamic where essentially I saw something maybe a year ago where it was in a woman's magazine, and it was promoting this idea of chore play, where to get your husband to do house chores, you will offer in exchange for them sex. And I thought that was so strange, that when it comes to household labor and sharing the tasks and all of this stuff, that not only does it hurt the woman to have to constantly pander and pick up everything after a man, it also hurts the man, because why are we treating men like they're these bumbling oafs that don't know what they're doing? They're very capable of doing this stuff. And I think that it's a way to often, I've seen that on the online, some men are purposely not doing the grocery run well, so because they know that their wives will just say, oh, I'll just do it and I'll take over it. And I think that perhaps there's this just lineage of this always happening that we kind of cling to.
I wonder too about women's capacity to be territorial about some domestic stuff, and don't get me started on childcare, because that's a whole other.
Don't get her started.
No, don't get me started. What do you think about that? I know you're not at that stage yet, but would that concern you in the future?
If I was with a man in the future, that I guess that would concern me, because of the roles and all the stuff that people say about oh, does he babysit the children? Can you get your husband to babysit when it's his own child? It's not something I've experienced. But yeah, I guess that would be something that I'd be concerned about in the future, if I was to ever be in a situation. But I know that a lot of women go through that.